everybody. Welcome to another episode of Elves, Rings, Nerdy Things. We are powering along through House of the Dragon Season 2. But before we get to House of the Dragon Season 2, if you're Critical Role fans, I don't know if you saw the news, but sad news that Sam Riegel was diagnosed with cancer, and he is currently fighting that. Back in the show, though, so his absence kind of coincided with FCG's death, and then he kind of stepped away from the show for a little while, but then we found out that it was due to a cancer diagnosis, and it has to do with HPV. So if you do not have your HPV vaccine, you or your children, please get that. Little public service announcement. If you're a male and you get the HPV virus, you could get tonsil cancer or throat cancer, and that is what Sam Riegel was currently diagnosed with and had surgery for.
It's sad, especially doubly so because he's a voice actor. And what will that do to his voice?
Well, he did say they posted a 5-minute video, and I shared that on our Elves, Rings, and Nerdy Things Facebook page if you would like to watch Critical Role's video that Sam recorded. He had part of his tongue removed, his tonsil, and part of his soft palate. And he's been at speech therapy because he had a bit of a lisp. So yeah, happy that Sam is back. And like I said, if you are keeping up to date with Critical Role Campaign 3, there is a new Sam Riegel character that made its appearance. So fun stuff. Because that's such big news and we are fans of nerdy things, I'm sure there's Critical Role fans out there. So if you want to watch that video, it's on our Facebook page.
Does this have any reason or anything to do with the delay in the Vox Machina anime?
It very potentially could.
Yeah.
They didn't announce that at all, but yeah, I mean, no one really knew. Everybody just kind of assumed when characters in the past have died in Critical Role, there's usually a gap because Matt tries to find a good natural time for a character to come in. So I don't think anybody really knew that it was this until yesterday when the video was announced. But yeah, so.
Well, we wish him the best. He's got a lot of loving fans, and I'm sure that he knows that. And seems like I hope nothing can dampen his spirits, because he's certainly one of the bright lights out there.
But Sam, how are you?
Doing well. Yeah, I was just thinking it is tough to cover a show that comes out on Sunday nights.
Mm-hmm.
And we were spoiled with the Rings of Power coming out on Fridays and having the whole weekend to watch at our leisure. Sunday nights are tough, especially in this house. I don't know about you and Carly, but we have a lot going on here.
I mean, not as much because I don't have a child and I can be like, oh, I want to stay up until whatever time watching this fantasy show.
Okay.
So I think I have more time than you, but that it still sucks to watch it Sunday night. And then I'm still busy, cooking dinner. Next week's going to be rough because I have trivia on Tuesday night. So it's going to be hard to record. So I'm hoping that we can find a time to get that done. But alas, this is not a show about our schedules.
Yeah, this is
how difficult it is.
Here's what I do on Monday nights
to record episodes of this show.
But I mean, I have to say it's worth it though. I think this season of House of the Dragon is very good. I mentioned how especially that final scene in episode 3 was phenomenal, and then we're finally getting some action. This episode is the kind of the spotlight of the episode is for a short time at least, 3 dragon epic throwdown with the backdrop of a siege of a castle. So let's do the plot summary real quick. I'll read that and then we can talk about the episode. So this is House of the Dragon, Season 2, Episode 4, The Red Dragon and the Gold. Daemon dreams that he decapitates young Rhaenyra, who accused him of treason. Archmeister Orwyle prepares Alicent an abortifacient tea. He professes ignorance when Alicent asks who Viserys named as heir. Criston beheads Lord Darklyn, who refuses allegiance. Alice Rivers tells Daemon that Harrenhall is haunted. Her sleep potion causes Daemon to see Laena Velarion's ghost while in council. Rhaenyra returns to Dragonstone and agrees to war, volunteering to dragon ride. Rhaenys volunteers instead. Rhaenyra tells Jacaerys about the Song of Ice and Fire. Aegon vents his anger that Aemond and Criston have planned the campaigns without him, including besieging Rook's Rest rather than Harrenhal. Alicent tells Aegon he is more useful by doing nothing and allowing the council to make all decisions. Angered, Aegon flies Sunfire to Rook's Rest. Rhaenys on Meleys burns Criston's troops while Aemond and Vhagar are hidden nearby. As Aegon and Sunfire approach, Aemond stays out of sight. Meleys mauls Sunfire in the resulting battle. Aemond commands Vhagar to burn Meleys and Sunfire, causing Sunfire to plunge to the ground. Rhaenys attacks Vhagar, who falls but is unharmed. As Meleys circles above, Vhagar rises and grabs Meleys' neck, throttling the smaller dragon. Meleys and Rhaenys fall to their deaths. Criston, knocked unconscious during the battle, awakens. He finds Aemond, sword in hand, approaching a prone Aegon and the gravely injured Sunfire. Sean, what did you think of episode 4?
Finally, some action.
Yes, indeed.
My complaints with this season so far have been there have been war-triggering actions that have occurred a couple times now, and I still couldn't believe no one was marching on anybody else. So now it seems a little bit more legit that these things would actually happen in these instances. I take partial credit for being right in who's going to die first. I believe I predicted either Otto or Rhaenys. Now, my problem is internally, I said Otto or Rhaenys, and you told me to pick somebody. Then I kind of copped out and picked two.
I re-listened to that episode, and I'm prepared to give you 100% credit. I had to resist the urge to spoil this episode for you when you made that prediction because it was so spot on. But yeah, so this was it. Our first talking point, I guess, is hello, Rook's Rest, goodbye, Rhaenys. So she dies pretty epically, we'll say. Her dragon is killed. She's alive when the dragon is killed. She falls from the sky. The dragon smashes into the castle, opening up a breach in the walls through which the attacking army pours. We don't really spend much time on the downfall of the castle. This episode was really about Aegon, Aemond, and Rhaenys, and everything kind of leading to that battle. And there's a lot kind of going on that set up this dragon battle. And I think we have slightly differing takes on how things develop. So from where you sit, Sean, how did we get to this point?
So for me, Aemond and Criston Cole are scheming. They are plotting a war without Aegon's knowledge. Aegon always intended for them to go to Harrenhal because access to the Riverlands was a strategic point in Westeros that needed to be controlled. Aemond and Criston Cole begin that directive. They are taking castles and keeps in the Crown Lands and converting people to their cause and then killing everybody who still won't give up their oath to Rhaenyra. But instead of turning towards Harrenhal, Criston Cole sends a raven to King's Landing, and in that small council meeting, Aemond says, no, we're going to Rook's Rest. And to me, the scheming behind Aegon's back, the plan was always for Aemond to go to Rook's Rest, and Harrenhal wasn't ever going to be, at least in like this initial phase of their conflict, it was always going to be, let's go to Rook's Rest. We will basically seal Dragonstone off from the land and then keep them isolated. And Harrenhal would also be a distraction for the Blacks. And I don't know if they assumed they would send a dragon to Harrenhal to kind of claim it or take it, but that's what ends up happening. But that's how I saw everything go down. And then it made a little bit more sense when Aegon was so pissed in the small council chamber because he was the one who said, we're going to go to Harrenhal, and everybody was ignoring him. And Aemond and Criston Cole were kind of doing their own thing. So that's how I interpreted it. That's how we got to Rook's Rest. One thing that I will say that kind of pissed me off was there's and it's kind of the same for Rings of Power for me, where intelligent people make imbecilic decisions. And in this instance, like you've already shown us that, oh gosh, what's your name? Bela? Is that her name?
I believe so. The one who can the daughter of
Yeah,
Daemon,
the one
who
who's
has the dragon.
married to Jake and has the dragon. So
Yeah.
they already showed us in the last episode that she is out patrolling
Mhm.
all the time. How does nobody how is nobody not following this army as they're like going across the countryside? You know what I
Mhm.
mean? So like the fact that they're going to Rook's Rest, how is that a surprise?
So that can I just underline that point? There was a scene in that scene in the episode 3 when Bela says, "I saw Sir Kristen Cole and a party of knights, galloping in this direction. They're looks like they're heading toward Derry or Stokeworth or whatever it is." And then immediately the Maester says, "Oh yes, we've had ravens that confirm that." I was like, so not only do you have the dragon scout, you're getting ravens from people updating you. So yeah, it would make sense that it'd be relatively easy to track the progress of the army, even if they're traveling at night and even if they are under the trees, right? The people who own these castles are going to hear reports, an army marching, even if they're doing it at night. They're going to have torches. It's going to be visible for people. Maybe it'll be harder for a dragon, but also like a dragon at night is basically impossible to bring down, right? Arrows, scorpions, like you're not going to hit a dragon flying at night, especially a young, fast dragon. So theoretically, you could be scouting at night as well. So I think it's a little hard to believe to agree with you on that. But yeah, keep going with your point though.
But then like that hard to believe fact that nobody saw this army going to Rook's Rest, coupled with how could they not know that Vagar has left King's Landing? The whole point of them, and Rhaenys was doing this too. They've
Mm-hmm.
already shown us in multiple episodes how these two dragon riders are scouting the area. For a dragon as big as Vagar to be able to leave King's Landing and then hide at the small castle of Rook's Rest
Mm-hmm.
without anybody knowing, it just seemed really hard to believe. And I wanted a little bit better, a bit better of an explanation as to how this would be able to come to pass.
And I think it could have been done with one line of dialogue. And there was even an opportunity for it when Rhaenys was talking to Corlys, saying, "I've got to go to Dragonstone. The council is going to eat Bela and just Karis alive." Because at that point, Rhaenyra was still gone. Nobody knew where she was. And they're having this council meeting during which Rhaenyra eventually comes back. Rhaenys should have said, you know, I should be patrolling the skies looking for signs of Vagar, but I have to go to Dragonstone for this council. Otherwise, they'll be led astray or whatever it is. So they should have demonstrated that there was a trade off in having yet another council meeting where all of your dragon riders have to attend. And the trade off is, oh shit, we lost track of Vagar. And then I buy that you could hide Vagar in the woods or like over on the other side of a hill or something like that. Like,
Yeah, but how does he get there without being seen? Is he
that's the thing.
crawling the whole way?
Well, yeah, but so
He would have to fly over and land. And you would
yeah,
see that when they showed how big Vagar is compared to trees when he was crawling out of the forest. It's just like, I don't know. He's
yeah, you think that
enormous.
somebody at like the castles that are on the way to Rook's Rest would be like Vagar's flying and maybe Lucid. I guess technically speaking, they pledged allegiance to or they pledged fealty to the Greens, and so they wouldn't necessarily be updating Dragonstone about the whereabouts of Vagar. I think to your point though, I'm willing to buy that fact that nobody spotted Vagar from the ground, but they've gone out of their way to demonstrate how the Dragonstone crew has been patrolling, yet they conveniently weren't in the air when the only dragon they really need to worry about was on the move. So I think you said imbecilic intelligent creature or intelligent characters being imbecilic. You can only be as smart as the characters can only be as smart as the writers. And I don't think House of the Dragon has suffered that symptom or that reality very much. This could be an example of it. It could also have been a scene or a line of dialogue that they decided to cut and just let us fill in the gaps that, oh, well, we know that all the dragon riders have to go to this council meeting, and that's why they weren't controlling. Unlike in especially the latter seasons of Game of Thrones and then Rings of Power, where it's like literally the characters who are supposed to be smart are becoming stupid, and the characters that are described as smart are making dumb decisions. Anyway,
we haven't talked. Oh, do you want to talk about Rhaenys a little bit more?
Yeah, I guess we should kind of give her a send off, right?
I was going to segue us into the second point.
I'll just say too, where I depart a little bit from your perspective on this is I think the plan originally was as described, that Criston Cole and Aemond would eventually go to Harrenhall, and they improvised somewhat when Harrenhall was claimed by Daemon, because they didn't want to assault a castle that was held by a dragon, especially Daemon, because they probably recognize that he's the more capable of the dragon riders, because his dragon has been to war relatively recently. But they saw this opportunity to attack Rook's Rest and lure a dragon. And I think they probably wanted to lure Rhaenyra. And you saw how it almost worked. So I think it's not necessarily, I think I disagree in that Rook's Rest was a target of opportunity when Harrenhal had been claimed. And I think you saw how some folks on the council are a little bit quicker on their feet than Aegon. When, Aegon was raging about how they were supposed to take Harrenhal, and why didn't they do that already? And why didn't Lord Strong, Larys Strong, hold on to his castle? And then he instantly has this great comeback, which seems to be accurate. It's like Daemon's going to go crazy there, and it's a money sink, and it's actually, this is for the good, right? And then Aegon's like, well, I wanted that castle. That was supposed to be my castle. And then they had that confrontation with Aemond. So I think there's a little bit of an improvisation there, but I am more than happy to be wrong about that.
Our send off for Rhaenys.
Yes.
I feel bad for her because throughout the entire show, she's always felt like a character that's kind of just been a passive participant that gets dragged into shit all the time. Yeah. And then constantly gets stepped over. And then now she's the one that ends up biting it. And I just felt bad. And then the look her dragon gives her as its neck is being chomped down on. And then Rhaenys's look. Oh, it's just like, oh man, this just sucks.
It was tough. Haley and I were watching together, and she, like, at several points, like, stopped watching, and she was like, just tell me what happens. I can't watch. Because they, like, yeah, I get it. They're CGI dragons, but they go out of their way to show that the dragons are intelligent, and they have these, I think both Rhaenys and Meleys and Aegon and Sunfire have a moment of, like, putting their heads next to each other and like this showing the bond between dragons. And it's pretty tough to see, again, CGI fantasy creatures, but ones that are pretty well rendered, suffer and die and be torn apart and all that stuff. That was hard. But it was, I think, to your point, it's like, these are sacrifices. These are losses. This is demonstrating the terrible nature of dragon war. And I think watching the after the episode, the behind the episode with Ryan Condal was talking about that, how, like, the character of Criston Cole specifically is now exposed to the horror of dragon war. And we kind of experience that battle on the ground largely through his eyes. And
another moment of failure.
Yes. How many times? And I said this to Haley, like, this guy just keeps failing up, right? Like, how many times has he broken his oath, murdered people, failed to protect members of the royal family? Like, it's just awful.
Sent people on suicide missions.
Yes.
The heir to the king, and now the king himself potentially mortally wounded. Yeah, just across the board.
Yeah. Rhaenys and Corlys had a moment in this episode too, where I think we got as close to confirmation as possible so far that Alan is Corlys's bastard son. And Rhaenys seems a little like she's accepted it. She's not happy about it, but she's accepted it at least. And
Yeah, she says something along the lines of he should have his place at court or something, like you shouldn't be hiding him. It was something
yeah,
along the lines of that.
yeah, I think she was like she resented having to say that because she's like I think it was implied that anybody else who wasn't your bastard son would have been richly rewarded for saving your life. Yet you're not rewarding him because he is your bastard and you don't want to elevate him or draw attention to it or whatever it is. And that's probably not right, even though it would, similar to Catelyn Stark and Jon Snow, it's like it would shame her to have him around or be this reminder of
Yeah.
Corlys's infidelity. But it seems like she's probably recognizes that that's get over that, right?
Well, now it doesn't matter. She's
And now
dead.
it doesn't matter.
Segue into our next topic. Everybody hates Aegon. So
Everybody,
Aegon, yeah, Aegon was at the battle, unfortunately for him. He was told by Alicent that his job as king is to kind of just sit there and let everybody else kind of manage everything for him. And he's kind of like a figurehead. And
the exact opposite thing to say to your son if you
yeah.
actually want him to do that.
Mm-hmm. So arguably what he should have done after the assassination of his child, which was get on a dragon and go burn some shit, he finally decides to do after he's had a few too many wines.
A whole pitcher, at least.
Yep. And he drunkenly gets on Sunfire, rides Sunfire into battle, and we could assume Sunfire is probably definitely dead based off of the gaping wounds that were on Sunfire's chest. At least that's my prediction.
Okay.
I don't think Aegon's going to die, but the fact that we got confirmation that dragon blood burns.
Oh, that was cool. I like that.
It was acidic and whatever
Yeah.
it was, but that was a nice little touch. But yeah, Aegon had a pretty rough episode. He's
Yeah.
dressed down in High Valyrian at the council by his younger brother Aemond. His dragon is seemingly mortally wounded. He's barely alive.
His mom just thrashes him verbally.
Oh, she bitch slapped him.
Yeah, that was brutal.
What did she say? I just hope you're half of the king your father was, or something
and
like that.
His father wasn't that like his father happened to have a pretty good hand for most of his reign and was lucky.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. The thing, so we didn't talk about. I think that the Alicent scene is so critical to motivating Aegon's decision to go to war. And I think Alicent was still suffering the after effects of her conversation with Larys, right? Because I think Larys sees the moon tea container and instantly puts it together. I'm assuming that as much. And then he, have another one of their tense conversations, and you can tell she's really uncomfortable. And maybe some of that is the side effects of the moon tea or whatever else. But it's like you can see how Alicent is in prior episodes when confronted with Aegon's shittiness. She had at least a sense of restraint, right? This time she just lets it go. And that seems to be the nail in the coffin, almost literally, for Aegon.
And it really feels like there's so many times with their relationship that, like, right after his son is killed and she walks in on him and he's crying in his chambers. If she would just show a moment of compassion for him.
Yeah. I love you.
Just
say that.
You're the reason he's shitty because you have enabled him his entire life. You're the one who put him on the throne when he never wanted to be king. Like all of these different things, like he is what he is because you, Otto, and all of these other influential people have created him to be this way. And now you're going to shit talk him when he's king. Of course he's going to make rash decisions now.
Mm-hmm.
Now's the time to kind of change your method of nurturing him.
Yeah.
At this moment. But
yeah, you've coddled him for his entire life, and this is what you get. Don't stop now.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Yeah, this is I'm trying to think, like, this was Mothers Against Drunk Dragoning. Can we
Hmm.
coin that? Can we get bumper stickers with that? Um,
Yeah,
yeah,
it's still mad.
yeah, I know. There we
Yeah,
go.
that's great.
Okay, so the major thing that causes Aegon to fall from the sky and maybe kill his dragon, and if not kill him, at least horribly injure him, is Aemon deciding to burn Sunfire and Meleys, seemingly with a disregard for what it will do to his brother, what it could do to his brother. And even then, or even before then, Aemond rather, is starting to lift off on Vagar, and he sees Aegon flying on Sunfire and decides to ignore it and stay. And even like that's what causes, or then Cole sees Sunfire show up and he's like, keep sending signal arrows.
Hmm.
Like, keep pushing that button to try to summon Aemond. So Aemond, I mean, I as like he did all of those things intentionally, right? Unlike the confrontation with Luke, where that seems to have been Vagar kind of taking over. Aemond did not rise immediately and allowed Sunfire and Aegon to get into a fight, kind of an even fight. Aemon said Dracarys to breathe fire on those two. And then he is standing over Aegon with his sword drawn and nobody else around until Cole appears. And so I said in the pre-show discussion that maybe it was him just ready to defend himself from the death throes of a dragon if necessary. But maybe it's also him deciding to put his brother out of his misery,
Yeah,
whereby he would ascend to the throne.
I got the same vibe. I think Aemon thinks after that scene in the small council where he just belittles him in Valyrian, I think he thinks he would make a better king if Aegon is going to come into this battle. I think Aemon was kind of like, all right, go ahead.
Mm-hmm.
If you think you're the better dragon rider, if you think you're the better warrior tactician, prove it.
Yep.
And Aegon is not able to and suffers because of that. But no, I totally think Aemond believes he would be a much better ruler. And I don't think those first two instances that I just mentioned are Aemond actively trying to kill Aegon.
Mm-hmm.
But I think if Kristen Cole doesn't interfere, I think he was about to, personally.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. I don't disagree. I think he's already gone that far,
Mm-hmm.
right? He's already let the dragon fight happen. He already came in. Interestingly, the book is rather silent on this. This happened. There's one major difference in how this went down compared to the book, which is in Fire and Blood, Aegon and Aemond are both there, and they do this ambush together, and Rhaenys on Meleys goes for Sunfire, goes for Aegon because one, it's the dragon that she's more evenly matched with, and two, if she takes him out, then that strikes a major blow for her side, and she's pretty much resigned to the fact that I'm not coming out of this. And I think we saw that on Rhaenys. And we can one thing we didn't talk about was, why didn't she fly away after Sunfire went down? Why she decided to come back? We can maybe circle back to that if you want to. And then in the book, there is fire. I think all the dragons are breathing fire, but the major injury to Sunfire and Aegon happens when Vagar like pushes the other two dragons to the ground. And it seems to be a little bit less at the direction of Aemond. It's never mentioned that, people don't speculate that Aemond did it on purpose to try to kill his brother. But I like this. I like the way that they did it. I like the fact that it was an ambush, but Aegon wasn't supposed to be there. And then Aemond kind of took this opportunity because they're really setting him up to be that Daemon parallel. And I think this feeds into it.
I'm really ready for a Daemon Aemond showdown. I think that's going to be pretty awesome.
I think, and they're definitely building to it, right? With some of the
Yeah.
hallucinations that we get.
Another prediction.
Okay.
I think Daemon and Aemond both die in a fight against each other. I think they're going to kill each other in a fight.
All
That's
right.
my prediction.
Well, mark it down on the tracker.
I thought I had another one, but I don't remember, and I'm
You
not going
did.
to commit. Oh, did
You're
I?
yeah. It was that Alan would become Corlys's heir.
Oh, yeah. Okay. And that was before I knew he was his bastard son. So,
That's right.
I mean, not
Making predictions about a book that came out 5 years ago.
but I've never read it.
I know. I'm just kidding.
I'm making predictions based off of the show that they're showing me.
I mean, well, you are an astute observer of television.
I was pissed off though that I knew in the last episode I knew Rhaenys was going to die because the scene after her, which so this is another cool thing. I don't know if they meant to do this, but did you know that when two bald eagles are fighting each other over territory, they will lock claws and then like death spiral to the ground?
Oh, interesting. No, I did not.
That's exactly what Vhagar and Meleys did.
Interesting. Okay.
So it looked like two eagles kind of fighting. But then when they both fall to the ground like that, and Meleys is able to kind of like fly away, and then they have that pausing scene of Rhaenys on her dragon, and she kind of like relaxes for a minute, and they're about to fly over the castle and go back to Dragonstone. I thought that was such a stupid scene because if you're Rhaenys, it would be very obvious that a giant dragon was either
where the dragon hide? Yeah.
The dragon would either be laying on the ground or you would see it flying away. Like to put your defense down like that, I thought it just didn't make any sense to me. Another thing that didn't make sense in the episode. So I need to learn to suspend my disbelief a little bit better in some of these instances. Cause I'm like, it's just hard to, when it's like Vhagar's fucking massive.
Yeah.
How would you put your cooldown when you can't see him? I would still think that he's a threat personally, but
yeah, I had a similar thought watching the episode. And then I guess in formulating my like, what's the justification for the character's actions in that moment that makes sense? It's because it's the middle of a battle and she's frazzled and she's not thinking as clearly as she would have. And I think there's some throwaway lines about, we're off to war again that she says to Meleys before they fly. And it's like, when did you and Meleys go to war? I don't recall that being established in the show, especially. And I fail to recall in the books. Like, she's an experienced dragon rider, but I don't think she ever went to war with Meleys. She very obviously did not participate in the war that her husband was fighting in the Steppe Zones, where maybe another experienced dragon rider would have been useful. But yeah, I just kind of chalked that up to, in the heat of the moment, she wasn't thinking, because I was like, fly straight up. He's going to, like, Vhagar comes at people from below them. We've established that. And then sure enough, that's what happened.
Our last topic we want to talk about, speaking of Daemon not being where he should have been, Harrenhall.
Yeah.
And your first point is called Goat Dog's Wooden Cross. And I have no idea what the fuck you're talking about.
Okay. So this is one of those things where I caught it when it happened, when the episode aired, and I made a note of it, and I haven't yet gone back and done a rewatch to see if there's anything else going on here. But so do you recall in the Game of Thrones show, that Tywin Lannister took over Harrenhal, and I think the Mountain was there, Sir Gregor Clegane, and then when they leave, Roose Bolton takes it over. So that was simplifying things from the show, or excuse me, from the book. In the book, Tywin Lannister does take it over, but then when he leaves, he gives it to Vargo Hoat, who is a sellsword captain, and his band of sellswords is called the Brave Companions, and their standard is a black goat, which is an emblem from a city in Essos that they come from. So that was the goat that we saw, and it's like in the middle of it's like in a room, just kind of weird. Like, Daemon looks at it and they doesn't acknowledge it. It's not clear what it's doing there, but there was definitely a goat, and then the goat is standing over what looks like pieces of like a wooden beam that are roughly arrayed into a cross or an X. In the books and in the show, Roose Bolton takes over Harrenhall. And what is Roose Bolton's banner? It's a flayed man on a wooden cross, the same wooden cross there where Theon is tortured. And so you have a black goat, which is the brave companions, and you have a cross, which is part of the Bolton emblem. And then there's a later scene where I think it's in the council chambers or some meeting room. There are dogs in the corner. And I remember seeing 2 dogs. There might have been 3, but I remember seeing at least 2. And what is the sigil of House Clegane? 3 dogs. And so I think it's a slight nod, slight reference to the later occupants of Harrenhall during the Game of Thrones timeline. And so that was just a fun little thing. I will go out after this and consume my normal nerdy coverage of House of the Dragon of the super book nerds who watch everything like frame by frame and break everything down in super detail. And I'm hoping to be confirmed in my suspicions that these are some not so subtle references to future events.
You should have saved these for Prop Watch. Next up is so before we were recording in our pre-recording discussion, Sam didn't have anything prepared for Prop Watch, but he clearly did with goat, dogs, and wooden cross. To me, goats and dogs are technically props.
All right.
They kind of build up your world building, and that's what props are.
This can be Prop Watch prelude. All right,
Yeah.
But next on the Harrenhall topics.
Yeah, next up, visions, dreams, hallucinations. So Daemon is tripping.
Oh, yeah.
In this episode. Especially after, so what does he say? He can't sleep or something? And then he goes...
hard time sleeping.
Yeah, finds the witch. She is already brewing him something and then has him drink it. And then he kind of wakes up at a small council chamber and hallucinates again. And does he see Rhaenyra pouring? Or does he see somebody else?
He sees Laena pouring his...
That's right. His dead wife.
Or his second wife.
Yeah. Yeah. He's having a weird time at Harrenhall. Definitely. I mean, I don't have any much more to say besides it seems kind of like a waste of time at this point.
I'm grappling with it because it's a little trippy, and I don't know if I'm ready for like a trippy segment in my Game of Thrones universe show, but I'm gonna give it space to play out. And I think in earlier episodes of this podcast, I've complained a little bit about Daemon, and I am enjoying giving him a little bit more to do than be a jerk, even though he still is being a jerk. But now we're seeing him a little bit more vulnerable because he doesn't know how to deal with things in his head. And it helps us give a little bit of an insight into his character, right? Who does he see? He sees young Rhaenyra, who accuses him of treason. He cuts her head off, right? That was the culmination of that first hallucination. And then he sees Laena. And does the Laena hallucination say anything to him, or is she just kind of pouring the wine?
She's pouring wine, yeah.
Yeah, and it's actually just a serving person. And then the third hallucination is, and I think this ties into your prediction about a confrontation, it's ailment. And it's ailment, and at first you just see this figure walking through, and it looks like ailment because it's got the hair's done similarly and the clothes is similar. But then at one point, Daemon stops, or the hallucination turns around, and it's just Daemon wearing an eye patch, which is pretty cool. And I think it gets at the similarities, the reflections between these two characters. And then in the inside the episode discussion, I think Ryan Condal, who wrote this episode, he's the showrunner, but he also wrote the script for this episode. I think he talks about how those are the 3 characters that Daemon really had a big influence on. And it's interesting because it hasn't been as explicit that Daemon has a strong influence on Aemond, but Aemond seems to be trying to emulate him in a lot of ways. And I think some of his comments to the madam get at that. Mm-hmm. All right, can I make one more two more comments actually with the witch scene.
Thank you for asking permission. Yes, you may.
I guess I do co-host this podcast, but
Yeah, I'm like, why are you asking?
I
Just
just want to be
talk.
polite. So this Alice Rivers character, she says that the bed that Daemon sleeps in is made out of a weirwood, which is kind of interesting. Which, like, if you want a recipe for fucked up sleep, weirwood bed is one way to do it. And then I think there might be a slight connection, or I'd be interested because doesn't it look like she's got blood on her fingers when she's making that sleeping potion or whatever it is? It looks like blood. I'm not saying it is, but it looks like blood.
I mean, it also looked like she was putting like a heart or something into it. Like it looked like she was using animal parts in whatever this drink was.
Yeah,
So
that was definitely the impression that I gathered. I didn't know if okay.
it
So
looked weird.
So this ties into. Are you familiar with the Jojen paste theory?
No.
No. Okay. So this is in the books, and I can't remember how the show handled it, but in the books, when Bran is in the cave of the last Green Seer and he's learning to enter the Weirwood network, the children of the forest feed him a paste that's made out of ground up weirwood nuts. And when he eats it, it kind of unlocks his powers, his Green Seer powers, but it also has a subtle blood taste into it. And I think he describes it as looking like it has blood or like long red spirals going through it. And the theory is that it's Jojen, who in the show was killed like outside of the cave, but in the books he enters the cave, and there's other subtle hints that the children of the forest killed him and put him into this paste because sacrifice is a big part of accessing the weirwood powers, basically. And I wonder if it's a subtle hint there that it's not a human heart necessarily, but there is some sort of sacrificial magic happening. We'll see. It was an interesting scene. And then she says, like, I'm a barn owl, which it's like a weird thing to say.
I'm not a human. I'm a barn owl in human form.
Yeah. Okay. Well,
she seems interesting.
Yeah.
And our last thing before we get to prop watch, is there something else you want to say about Visions, Dreams? Okay. Oscar Tully is apparently a decrepit old man who cannot maintain order amongst all of the people who have pledged fealty to him.
No, Oscar Tully is his grandson, who we met in this episode.
Oh, Old Man Tully, sorry.
Old Man Tully is Grover Tully. Do you know the name of Grover Tully's son and Oscar Tully's father? Kermit Tully.
And who's Kermit Tully's son?
Oscar Tully. So you got Grover, Kermit, and Oscar.
Are all of those Sesame Street characters?
Yes. George R. R. Martin inserted Sesame Street references, and this was speculation in the show or in the community of like YouTube people and podcasters are like, are they gonna do the Sesame Street Tullys? And they fucking did, and it's great.
Well, yeah. So we have the Old Man Tully. Sorry, I mixed up all of my different Tullys.
It's fine. It's such a small thing.
But that's what Daemon's kind of trying to figure out. While he has control of Harrenhall, he's still trying to find the army that he was going to promise to give to Rhaenyra. And what he's doing now is asking Oscar, the kid, if he's willing to kind of lead in his grandfather's stead before his grandfather dies. And he has a line.
That's why I'm laughing.
Daemon does of, why don't you put a pillow to his face or something like that?
Yeah, like speed along your inheritance.
Kill him and then just become the lord of But again, this whole like plot line to me is just filler. Yeah, I would have liked more. This could have happened in the last episode.
Mm-hmm.
And then you could have focused more on Rook's Rest in this episode, shown me more of a battle. I don't know. I like the Daemon character. I'm ready for the character to actually do something because I feel like he hasn't really done anything since season 1 when he was taking over the Stepstones, but that's my opinion.
I think you're right. He set the assassination into motion, but that was a huge, terrible fuck up, according to everybody else. Maybe Daemon is a little bit more uh, dismissive of that characterization, but I kind of I like the fact that he is seemingly frustrated in his efforts to get an army because the Tullys can't commit, and then it's obvious that the Blackwoods are, because we get a scene with him and the Blackwood folks at the end of the episode or closer to the end of the episode, and they very much were like, yeah, we'll fight for you, but also help us burn House Bracken. So it really is more about their feud than who should sit the Iron Throne or the justice of any cause. And then you layer on top of this frustration his hallucinations and this Alice Rivers character. And I just think we're going to get a Daemon who is going to be ready to explode at some point. And how that manifests itself is yet to be seen. He is, he's largely, I don't know. I think they're going to need to have him do something, right? It can't literally just be spending the rest of this season having similar conversations. I think maybe in the preview, we do see the fact that he's going to get on his dragon and he's going to threaten some people. So that could be fun. We could get some action with Daemon.
I think there's a couple characters who are going to be ready to go off. Daemon, Corlys now, is probably going to rage a little bit. Yeah. So we'll see.
I think we're getting to the point where if Daemon is going to stay in the Riverlands and around Harrenhall, the Black faction is going to have a very hard time fielding dragon riders because Rhaenyra is the queen. They already had the conversation about how she cannot be risked on the battlefield, especially against Vhagar. And Jacaerys is the heir. And his life is also very important. And so who are you left with? You're left with Baela. And Baela has a tiny dragon, or a smaller dragon who's definitely no match for Vhagar. And so I think they're going to be in a tough situation, even though they have this advantage on paper with the number of dragons they have. They don't have dragons they can actually put out in the field. And so it might as well not even exist. So I think we're going to see that that's going to have some ramifications with some of the seeds that have been planted in earlier episodes.
And now, Sam, what all you listeners have been waiting for, let's wrap it up with Prop Watch.
Well, apparently I got the big Prop Watch stuff out of the way. My goats, dogs, and wooden crosses. But, okay, so Aegon's fidget spinner. So Aegon is, I won't say ADHD, but he's definitely has a short attention span. He yells at his council that they bore him, and he's playing with his council ball the entire time, spinning it around, slamming it down. He also destroys that pretty ornate wine pitcher later in the episode, right before he mounts up on the dragon. So
pretty dope wine pitcher.
Yeah, which is now smashed, which kind of a theme of this season is people smashing drinking vessels. We'll see where that goes. He had the moon tea cup that Grandmaster Orwyle delivered to Alicent. I thought that was well done. And then it was also really great that she left it out for Larys to see. Mm-hmm. And then finally, the scene where Kristen Cole wakes up on the battlefield and he goes to shake the shoulder of the standard bearer, and it just falls apart because the person was burned to a crisp, and the skeleton is just hanging out in the armor. I thought that was good. That was a good use of scene. Props. Yeah.
Yeah. Between all of the soldiers being burned alive, that standard bearer, and then the blood melting people, and then Vhagar stepping on a couple mm-hmm. Troops as well. It just it really showed how intense war with dragons would be. And mm-hmm. Game of Thrones just never did it justice. They had 3 dragons, and I don't remember a fight including dragons being as good as this one in Rook's Rest.
Yeah, I mean, thinking back, they had the battle for Marine where the dragons come back and burn the ships, which was fine, but you only saw a couple things. And yeah, they're burning sailors. There's not knights and other dragons. You had the attack beyond the wall where they burn all the whites before Viserion is killed. And then really the fall of King's Landing. They don't do a whole lot during the Battle of the Long Night. It's the fall of King's Landing where you're just, We shouldn't even spend any breath talking about the final episode of Game of Thrones or the final season.
I do have one question for you to see if you have an answer.
Okay.
In the last episode of House of the Dragon, we saw 4 dragon eggs be taken to Essos. Well, this might be a spoiler for people, but I have read that 3 of those are the dragon eggs that become Daenerys's. What happened to the 4th? Do you know?
Yes, it will hatch into a dragon named Morning.
And then what becomes of that dragon?
Morning is the last dragon, the last living dragon before Dany's dragons
3
are hatched. Yeah.
Okay. And I'm assuming this dragon will take part in the events of House of the Dragon? Or is this like just filler info?
It may. I don't think we're going to see it this episode this season. And if we do see it in the series, it will never be large enough. I mean, they could change this from the book, but it will most likely never be large enough to be ridden into battle. You might see it flying around and bonding with somebody, but it will never be a factor on the battlefield.
Right on. Well, thank you, everybody, for listening to this episode of Elves, Rings, and Nerdy Things. You can follow us on Facebook. You can listen to us on pretty much every podcasting platform. You can send us emails at elvesringsandnerdythings@gmail.com. We have a Facebook group called Elves, Rings, Nerdy Things Podcast. But that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. Bye.